My name is Daniel Clark, and I will be discussing what white privilege is and how it affects Indigenous peoples around the world. I have for you a few modes of art to help demonstrate my points, including some simplistic yet effective cartoons and artwork by Indigenous artist Richard Bell. When I walk down the street, I don't think twice about the idea of facing harassment because of the colour of my skin. I don't fear the police, and don't feel it necessary to warn my son that flashing lights could mean danger as opposed to safety. I don't worry about going to a job interview and potentially being turned down without being given a chance because of the way that I look. When a stranger is rude to me without reason, I figure there must be other things going on in their life, as opposed to wondering if my mere existence is the problem. These are just some of the effects of my white privilege. The concept of privilege refers to the societal norm that systematically oppresses one group and simultaneously benefits another. In the case of white privilege, persons of colour are the oppressed, and white people are those that receive benefits. This privilege is something that isn't usually noticed by those who benefit from it, but it is quite obvious to those who are oppressed by it. In fact, the way in which society is structured around this privilege often skews the perceptions of the privileged group. Here's a comic to represent this idea. This first fish represents the oppressed group, in this case, persons of colour. The second fish may represent persons of mixed race, or those who are white passing. And the third is the privileged group, white people. As things have been working out well for the privileged group, they are incapable of perceiving the injustices that the other groups are facing, including those that they may be directly accountable for. On the contrary, the situation is overwhelmingly clear for the oppressed group. Over the course of the last 230 years, Indigenous Australians have been treated like a subclass of humans, creating an unequal, intergenerational power relationship between them and non-Indigenous peoples. This relationship has been founded on centuries of oppression and abuse, and while white people may have the luxury of overlooking this and pretending that it doesn't exist, persons of colour hold a deep-seated resentment for the way that they have been treated. This, in itself, is an example of white privilege in action. In direct relation to this, here is another cartoon. In this instance, you can see that the white character has taken advantage of the person of colour, using him to get to where he is today. However, when given the opportunity to award the same rights to the person of colour, the white man misunderstands equal rights to mean white oppression, despite any actions that he might take not having any effect on his own position. This creates the false notion of the existence of reverse racism. When the societal advantages awarded to white people are threatened, usually by the prospect of another group gaining equal rights, a number of them turn their arguments towards the idea that this is just as bad as the racism that people of colour face. This, of course, is an ignorant perspective that overlooks the generations of abuse and trauma that these groups have faced, diluting their lived experiences down to nothing more than people being mildly rude. In protest of white people's ignorance, Indigenous artist Richard Bell has created a number of works to highlight the issue. The text that accompanies much of his work has inspired controversy for its directness in calling out the racism in Australia, with people arguing that he's discriminating against white people. Again, this is another false perspective, reinforced by the misinformation regarding what racism actually is. Racism is deeply embedded into today's society, which has brought upon us the existence of white privilege. It is this system that white people have been building for generations through the oppression of those different to them that contributes to the inability to see the injustices of the world. And when those injustices are brought to light, they are passed off as retaliation from people of colour, as opposed to a request to be seen and treated as equals. White privilege is in effect every day, and it is important for society to understand this before anything can be done about it.